Hello, hello, and welcome to this edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of the Criminal Mastermind and managing partner of Ruane Attorneys, a civil rights and criminal defense firm in Connecticut. With me, as always, my man down there in the Delmarva Peninsula, Seth Price. Seth is the grand poobah of all things Blue Shark Digital, SEO for lawyers, as well as managing partner of Price Benowitz, DC, Maryland, Virginia, Wyoming, Montana. You got a place in Yellowstone now too, right? Because of the show. You're all over the place, Seth. I know I've been beat up today. How's your day going?
Yeah, similar. End of year, we did our end of year quarterlies. It is tough. I mean, the good news is I have to remind myself top line and bottom line numbers are good, but man, is that sausage making tough. We did John Knockhazel flew in. We did our quarterly, and I just realized how much work there is to do. And part of it just I was on the road. I spent some time with Andrew Finkelstein. And every time I do a friend of the show, he's been on before. When you see somebody who's running a firm at such an elite level, you sometimes feel not worthy.
You see what he's done, and you're like, man, I got to do a lot to get to that spot.
Exactly. And then, I'm talking to you and you're, we're sharing, bemoaning an employee leaving with a cell phone and the havoc that could, and when you get to the point.
Yeah. So let me tell everybody what happened this morning. So we have an employee who left. When they left, they turned off their employee's cell phone. Turns out that employee's cell phone was tied to our firm Venmo account. So we have all these people sending in Venmo, but we can't access the account. Now, I mean, the employee left on good terms, but an operations person shut off the cell phone. So we lost that cell phone number. So and then I said, well, let's just use somebody else's cell phone. But of course, I've got a bunch of millennials in those roles, and they all have Venmo already tied to their cell phone number. It won't take our text-enabled office numbers because they're not seen by their Venmo system as cell phone numbers. So I think after I get off the air with you, I got to traipse on over to pick up a cell phone, probably just a burner cell phone, right? I probably should call some of my clients, and they could probably access a burner cell phone faster than I can, just so we can get validated, get our money out, and then set up a new connection. But it's like, it's just one more issue on my plate. I'm the one who can figure out all the ways to solve it.
I feel your pain. I had a email the other day with the new marketing director's kicking ass, but it's like, oh, there's an old YouTube account. I'd love to get access to this. And I'm like, okay. It's like, and for whatever reason, they need to reset a password. The email was a Justia password from like 15 years ago. And it's just like, can't get there from here. And look, that is part of, systems are clearly the answer to many of our issues, right? If we had a process that was followed when somebody left, we would possibly be in better shape on something like that. But the piece that drives me crazy, and you get this, oh, we'll know for next time. I don't know if you hear that from your people. Right. We had a new person come in a number of months back, and they ordered T-shirts without my approval. Now, should the owner of a firm have to approve T-shirts? Probably not. But they ordered the most god-awful designs. So now I have a choice. Brand new employee, do you shit on them? Then now there are people walking around the law firm with this like absurdly terrible design. It's that balance of we have top line stuff we have to focus on, but the moment you sort of say, okay, I'm going to delegate and let these things happen, all sorts of nonsense can.
Oh, I hear you. I mean, that's why one of the things that we have in our office for that issue is a style guide, so that people can't change things across the line on graphic design, that type of thing. What I found as a system, I'm going to let you know when it comes to passwords, what I found as a system is that we've started using an alias software at Ruane Attorneys, so that if we're signing up for software or if we're signing up for a trial, we'll use trial at Ruane Attorneys. We built a whole bunch of aliases so that we can get access to accounts and people aren't using their own email address anymore.
Oh, right. Meaning like admin, yes. Yeah. And that, look, that's the big, I think that's something, going back to many of our audience, that the earlier you get, there's Sally, who's your lifeblood, who every account is set up through. But if instead it's firm at whatever, that will make your life. I wish I had done that. So anybody listening, I highly recommend, if you're in the early stages of making sure that individuals do not sign up for softwares with their firm email, but rather, and again, I'm going back and putting myself in somebody starting the firm, there's a slight price difference. It may be $5, $10, or $15 more for an active account versus a forwarding password, forwarding email, and spending that money on a couple of, as you call them, aliases, so that, and there's nothing wrong. We have a ton of distribution lists,
Right.
and that gets you so far, but there are a lot of things that the in only, not can't receive, doesn't work for.
Right. So one of the things that we did, as to belt and suspenders and protect us, is that our Google Drive folder that everybody has access to is actually at a IT@Ruane Attorneys email address. That's a legit email box that we use for some of our IT things. But importantly, it means that our users can't delete things that they shouldn't be able to delete, because not one person actually owns it, but IT does. And IT has a nothing can be deleted, thing. So it's a way for us to sort of check ourselves and make sure. Plus, it's another thing I can see who I can log in as IT. I can see who's downloading stuff in bulk or not saving things because they haven't had access to the folders recently, which is a metric that you should be looking at, I think, if you have employees, because it's amazing. It's astounding to me how many employees are just, I just save it on my desktop, and they're not saving it to the server so that other people have access to it. So you should be checking that, at least weekly, if not quarterly, but definitely you should be checking it as you run to the end of the year to make sure all your employees are actually putting stuff where they belong, because people get lazy. And I mean, I've seen some desktops that will astound you with just shit everywhere.
No, understood. And look, I'm pivoting out of that to something that I picked up from Andrew Finkelstein, having spent some time with him. He was really big. You're talking about, IT issues with the cyber attack, which are getting worse and worse. We're getting more and more the gift card issue.
Yeah.
And that they're spoofing your name. And that, they're on teams at his firm. We're using Slack, as I believe you guys do, but pushing more and more there and having protocols so that people know what you will and won't do. That if you get an email asking for something, you will come through Slack or it'll come through text, letting people know this. He's working with some third-party softwares we're starting to try out. I don't want to push them yet because I can't speak to them, but that are basically testing your employees with fake attacks, so that to see whether or not they're following procedures. And the rule, I mean, he's pretty draconian. You fail twice, you're out of the firm. Like, wow. You need to be aware of what these things look like. And the entire city of Baltimore was taken down by one of these. We, in some ways, have less liability with so much in the cloud, but it is so, I think it is so important that people are aware and are trained, and that it's not sexy. It doesn't make us money, but if not to do it, I got the wake-up call. So we are doing a fire drill, trying to figure out what is the best way to continuously test the people. As recently, I love Facebook Messenger because I'm middle-aged. I got one through my father-in-law that I clicked on inadvertently just because it was my father-in-law. Mm-hmm. Turned out he had been hacked, and I had to unplug the computer and just make sure nothing had gotten any further. It is getting real, and that again, not a fun topic for today, but one that to if you just think about, if nothing else.
Well, it's funny. It's as we are ending the year, we're talking. We're not ending the year on an up note. We're sort of getting towards December and realizing all the stuff that we should have been doing in January and February. But that's really what this is all about. It's about growing and scaling your firm and addressing issues. Something that you find that hits you, I could then learn from it, get proactive, address it, so that it's not hurting you. And that's why we share these things to everybody out there, is because, we don't want you having to go through some of the same headaches that Seth and I have gone through over the last, 20 years of doing this. And if we can even just share our stories a little bit. This dovetails into the next thing. It's interesting because you just had John in. I'm going to be starting with John in the springtime. Actually, in January is when I start up with them, helping me with my firm. And I know he's big on dashboards. And I was at a drive-through the other day, and I looked through the window, and there was a whiteboard, when it was how many drive-through orders without a mistake, and they had the best was 193 or something like that in this restaurant, which is astounding because I always get screwed at the drive-through.
I got
My
you.
wife says that it's because I order, I don't just take what they give me. I order, like, I don't want pickles. Well, I don't like the taste of pickles, folks. So I want pickles.
Me neither. I never knew that about you. All these years, I'm not a pickle guy either.
I hate pickles. I hate pickles. My son, I'm going to put this out
as a Jew. That's a big deal. Like, I'm like ostracized by my family.
Yeah, no, but like everybody, my son loves the pickles. He has a ham, cheese, tomato, and pickle sandwich that just looks vile to me. But anyway, I hate the pickles. I always get screwed in the drive-thru. They always put the pickles on. And I always complain to my wife, and she goes, it's because you're customizing your order. And I'm like, you know what? It's not that hard to leave stuff off. I'm not asking for more stuff on. I'm saying leave stuff off. But anyway.
We have gotten so used to poor customer service that the other night we did a dinner when my son came home from school at like a nice Mexican place where I've been going for years. The service is always okay. It's well managed. There were a few things that were wrong. A drink got spilled. They screwed up the order slightly, wrong type of beans. Guy came by at the end and took like $30, $40 off the bill. I was like, I literally was caught. Why? And he's like, oh, because stuff wasn't right tonight. I've gotten so far to the point of 80-20, 60-40 that as long as the food comes out quasi hot, I'm okay. So I feel that anyway, continue.
So I'm thinking, I don't have visual dashboard, like visual scorecards up in my office. And we do have a weekly report that I get, that my C team, my C-level people get, where I can see who's billing, who's not billing, what our revenue is, how many intakes, who did, how long people were on the phone, how many file notes they created, all of those things. So I can sort of track what's going on. But then I'm starting to think that maybe I should take one or two things and really have like visible scorecards, like my receptionist team, the average amount of time that they are on the phone between passing it, right?
Part of it,
under a minute.
Part of it is, look, I've gone down that rabbit hole, right, with a pretty built out firm. A couple things I'll save you some time, I hope. I thought you'd have one Jumbotron. We'll call it Jumbotron. Turns out there are generally 3 Jumbotrons. There's never one. I mean, right? You could have an intake Jumbotron. You can have a case management Jumbotron, like how long on desk for PI cases, et cetera. And you can have a money Jumbotron, meaning tied into QuickBooks Online or whatever you're using. And what's most frustrating is it's 3 separate processes. Like I was like, oh, we just have one. And it is not. There's Domo that's very expensive. People love it because it's tied into FileVine. Power BI is what we've pushed with. And just full transparency. One of our Jumbotrons, great and awesome shape. Another one's still work in progress, despite consultants working on it and it not being where we want it to be.
So I use a company called Dash This. It's a French or Canadian company, and it provides, it plugs into our Google Analytics, our Facebook, our Google Search Console, all of that stuff. But it also allows you to import data by way of a spreadsheet to get reports. And so that's what my team uses to provide me with my management report every week. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to isolate certain metrics, create a new report that just displays online. They don't need a written report. They don't need to be able to print it out, but they can always refer to it with the link. And I'll just get a catchy URL like Ruane Dashboard or something like that. Or ruanescoreboard.com, and they can navigate to that link, and they can always check and see where they are compared to their coworkers. Because it's interesting to me with my intake team, the best motivation for them really is, I've done it the way sort of Kickstarter has done it, where I give them stretch goals per quarter. hey, if you have generate this much revenue, you're going to get this much of a bonus, that type of thing. And they really have responded to that all year. So we'll say these things, and they can then monitor that in real time where they're at, and can't hurt.
I think that's great. We've done similar team bonuses based on responsiveness, number of calls picked up. PS, a public service announcement. If you're doing LSAs, make sure that the calls are getting picked up. It's one of the few things you control. And, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I found we missed a call the other day, and I was like, all I want to know, mistakes will happen, is that it's not buried and I don't get a report a month later, but in real time, almost like a postmortem in a hospital. What happened? Let's get it fixed. Not, oh, here it turned out you missed 3 or 4 in a month. That can't happen because it's going to shut down your leads.
Yeah, I mean, the LSA is more than anything else is so dependent on their algorithm that if you become an outlier, I have our main LSA account is well monitored, but I found that they were not archiving stuff in a secondary LSA account. And our traffic has really dropped into that LSA. So I'm hoping to clean it up and get more leads in that way. And these are the types of things that matter. It's not the big things really. Now we're, and this is an interesting point because, we talk about the process of going from being in the business to being on the business, being the CEO role. But there's really a lot, like my problem with Venmo. There is some minutia that the person who, I'm in this role because I solve problems.
Yeah, but I would challenge you, and we now have a head of ops who's moving into a COO role. The more you do that, it's going to cost you money. It's going to be a 6-figure spot. That person could do most of that.
Sure.
And if you're willing to get there, and in fact, we did a really interesting exercise with Knock Hazel yesterday, where it was like the one thing. Pretty interesting. You had to go around the circle of the people on the management team, look everybody in the eye and say the one thing that they, love, respect about you as a business person. And then on the flip side, what is the one thing, if you could change it immediately, you should change? And that sounded pretty scary.
Yeah.
And it was nice hearing the nice things because it's nice for the ego. But, what I got was make sure that I go through our ops person rather than going directly to. And again, it's not exactly the same thing, but for you, it's not because the person, you're speaking to is now intimidated by you, which has been my issue. Is I come in today finding out that we missed an LSA call, and I'm like, trying to talk to a 24-year-old about how do you internalize this is a big deal. I mean, imagine $25,000 wasn't in your bank account this morning. How would you feel? And wanting them to have that goosebump moment to relate. But the problem is when I do it and I go directly to it. So anyway, for me, it was going through. For you, it may not be because the people don't like you. People like you, but for your own building of a business, until you funnel stuff through, even if it takes that person an extra 2 hours to go get the cell phone, it would be better, forcing yourself in that so that you have a real scaled firm.
Oh, absolutely. And these are the challenges that I get. The last 2% of out is the hardest because it's not something that you can anticipate systemizing. It's one of these things where you need somebody in the role who can actually assess it and solve it rather than.
Right. And that's right. So as great as you are with systems, it only gets you to some point. You're constantly creating.
Right. Like here's the thing. And I've been watching this show, The Terminal List on Amazon Prime, and it's pretty good. And it follows it follows a Navy SEAL after he's discharged from the service and some things that happen to him. I'm not going to blow it all up, but in some respects, when you're a CEO, and no disrespect, it's like you're the Navy SEAL. You never know what situation you're going to find yourself in. So you've trained for everything, and you are where you are because you can improvise, adapt, and overcome, and all of those things. Whereas the people who are below you may not have that. And so finding that diamond who can step in is a challenge. And I
challenge Jay this year to find that. It's great to have a Knock Hazel come in, But until you have that person where you're not that ops person, you're going to still be the Navy SEAL doing the ninja.
Right. But here's my thing. And this I guess maybe this is a question for therapy. Like my kids are in school. I'm not going anywhere.
Doesn't matter.
And
why are you
there
running
when I can
around
take that
doing a
100 grand?
Venmo or doing a buying a cell phone?
Right, but
Meaning
why? Let me answer this question. If it was, say, it's going to cost me $125,000 a year or $100,000 a year to put that person in that role, right? Well, what am I going to do with that time otherwise? Because why not take that 100 grand and put it into marketing?
That to me is extreme. There, you could make that argument a lot of stuff. First, you have some sort of admin, presumably. There's not nobody there.
Right.
So it's not necessarily 125, it's upgrading a person potentially. Meaning it's a position. To me, that's the linchpin. If you want to, like, you have Michael Gerber at one end saying everything has to be email. At the other end, you're just like, hey, I like this. I'm going to do it. I want to take that's $10,000 a month into marketing. You want to spend $10,000 a month in marketing, you make a good salary, you take $10,000 a month and put it to marketing. To me, it's a non-negotiable. You want quality of life, worry-free. To me, look, you want to go, I don't want you going to court, but you want to go to court, go to court. You want to work on your business, work on your business. You're telling me that if you didn't have all that stuff on your plate, you wouldn't come up with systems or business divisions or thought on things that wouldn't be worth it. That all of that mishigas in the middle taken out wouldn't make you more money. I challenge you on that for 2023. Okay. The idea that you're saving on an ops person, I don't buy at all. I think that you say a lot of great stuff. I think you're sort of, you can't see the forest through the trees from where I'm sitting, in that is a nominal amount of money if it really does free you up from that stuff.
Okay, I'll take your point. I'll consider it.
Go sit at fucking go take your kids to school every day and pick them up. That's what you want to do.
I do.
Whatever. But you know what I'm saying? Like, do more.
Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm in a pretty good spot right now. I really enjoy my life, and I don't.
I'm not saying you should. I think you'd enjoy it more, and that you would that you would end up with higher top line revenue if you got yourself out. Like, I'm taking my own advice. I have that team. For years, I don't need a marketing person. We have a marketing person now in, like, at a senior level. The shit they're getting done instead of me is unbelievable. And the ops person now is a junior. And again, it's expensive. There's money. I have to look at the bottom line and make sure the net is there. But as far as stability and ability to build and grow, to me, what makes you great is you're like, oh, you know what? I see an opportunity in tickets. I want to go in there. The way you do that is to have the bandwidth to work on that.
Right. So, and like, that's what I did. So my whole Monday was devising, and so we'll talk a little bit about it, and maybe I'll post it in the group if I get enough comments down below that people want to see it. So one of the biggest challenges is I've gone deep into YouTube pre-roll ads. I've talked about it a bunch of times on the show. I love them right now. Sam Molai, a couple of weeks ago, we were laughing about how don't tell everybody about this because they're great. But one of the biggest challenges for us as law firms is when that 40-year-old potential client hands their phone off to their kid, and now the kid starts watching YouTube, and while they hit the demographics of their profile, we don't want to show our ads to children because it's a waste of our spend, even if the spend is a penny or less than a penny per view. So what I did is, on Monday, I said there's got to be a way for me to determine the top 1,500 or so kids YouTube channels, both by video views and by subscriber count. So I got those, I figured that out, scraped that down, put it into a spreadsheet, and then I was able to take that into my YouTube campaigns, exclude all of those. And so now my ads are only showing on MSNBC, Fox, CNN, those types of things, and adult facing YouTube channels. And even this week, we've started to see, a couple of more people calling, oh, I saw your YouTube video, which means that I was wasting bandwidth before, but it's because I had the time to just sit down and be like, there's got to be a way.
Right. And that's where that's what's going to make you money, and you don't know it, because if you didn't have the time because you're going to get the cell phone on Monday, then you wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yeah. Okay. I got it.
So,
Okay.
last thing, because I know we got to wrap up, but for hopefully our final show before the end of the year, the topic of AI content exploding everywhere. It's
Okay.
all
So
over.
I've actually been playing with it this week.
Let's save that for the next show, and
Okay.
let's do a deep dive.
Okay. Before we go, though, a lot of people have messaged me privately and said to me, Jay, what conferences are you going to be going to next year? Because they want to sort of plan it out. And, it's sort of like a rubber band, that has sort of sprung back after, everyone being away from each other for so long. There just seems in the last 6 months to have been a ton of conferences.
No argument.
You're on the road every week.
Yeah, and it so much so
that on Thursday because you leave on Friday. You're on the road.
Understood, and it is. I think that we've seen this fall in particular a ridiculous proliferation, and that look, there's positive to it. I can tell you still. There's rarely a conference I go to that I don't learn or pick up things that I don't bring back and further monetize what I'm doing. Right. Okay. That is a positive. But I forget about this recent proliferation. I think it's a solid question regardless. Right now, we're seeing a crazy spin out of it. So there's a lot of them and there are different levels and tiers. I think the key is, where you are in your growth stage. One of the reasons I love about putting those systems in place is, and having an ops person, it allows me to do that. It's almost like a luxury. You say, some days I'm taking my daughter to a concert, some days I'm at a conference, and for me, it's an okay balance. But I think that as I was building my firm, there are points where what you need to get to the next level. And while I'm not saying don't go to conferences, absolutely go to conferences and the networking and the substance, but there are times when you're like, do I go to a third or fourth conference? And there's points where you're like, I need to get shit done, and making sure that you don't forget that.
I mean, I love the idea of going to conferences, and I know people love them too, because you get to go to a new city, you get to see your friends that you've met at other conferences, and you're all focused on growing and scaling your firm. But what I see is a lot of people go from conference to conference, but don't actually execute the stuff that they learn because they're at.
That would also go back to my point, which is if the team at home is there to execute, it gives you that luxury of doing it. Potentially, I'm saying that would be a reason where you feel it. You can't go away, not only for personal reasons because you don't want to be away, but if you don't have that person sitting there, then you really can't, because the place does fall apart if you're not there.
Truly, I can definitely get away. The place will not fall apart. I'm at that stage.
No, but you know what I'm saying. Meaning there are actual actionable things that are tied to you still, because you're like, hey, I don't want to spend $125,000 on a great executive. Because I want to do it. That tethers you slightly more than if you had somebody where I got a phone call at the end of the day saying, hey, these things happened, did this, and this. I'm like, these are all fine. Maybe on this one thing twice. But that said,
before we go, first quarter of 2023, I'm sure you've got I know you've got NTL.
I mean, and look, to me, if you're in the plaintiff space, and even if you're not, that is a awesome conference, I think, from both the substance point of view, but more importantly, it is as good a networking opportunity if you care about meeting people well beyond your pay grade. I went there as a pretty junior lawyer. I stumbled into the very first one about 13 years ago. And because of the lows, and it's back at the lows, thank God, the access to tremendous minds, I think, is almost greater here than other places where people are sort of, often VIP rooms and things like that, that the accessibility to people at this conference is pretty tremendous. It's grown a lot, but I still think it's one of my favorite of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I always have a good time when I'm down there in Miami. And then I'm going to be joining you in Austin in February. I'm really looking forward to seeing your presentation on local, heckling you from the seats.
That's sort of what's interesting is, I had that same issue myself. In one sense, it's very prestigious to speak at PubCon, but with the learning component virtual, it takes a lot to go. But as you know, 80% of the learning at PubCon is not on from the stage. It's what goes on in the hallways with a beer at night. It really is
I mean, the thing with me with PubCon has always been, I've been there, and I know I was there a couple of times with your team in Vegas when they had it in Vegas, and it was, you'd learn something in a session and then you'd come back and you'd be like, okay, how do we apply this to our practice and what we're doing? Because I see what these e-commerce people are doing with retargeting. How can we do something like that, like cross-platform retargeting? And
well, this is great example. There was this whole big thing with AMP, that everybody was supposed to be on AMP at one point.
Yeah.
And it said, oh, it's gonna make your site faster, this and that. And I went there, and I remember there was a panel of like 3 or 4 of the top like newspapers who were going on AMP. Very complicated, mind you, but they had entire teams. They need AMP, right? They have so much content. They needed it so badly. And every single one was like, yeah, we screwed this up. Not like this wasn't like little stuff. This was like our site crashed for several days. And to me, it was one of those life moments. I was like, you know what? If these guys with 20-person teams below them can't get it right, what chance does a lawyer have? And I was like, especially with an agency with the responsibility for all these people, yes, we'll be slightly less fast, but we're not going to have these catastrophic issues that all these guys came up with. And we stay. So part of it, I think, is crowdsourcing, that any one person, just like all the time, how often do we hear, oh yeah, I spent $10,000 on a TV budget and I'm crushing it. And then you find out, oh, maybe not so much. They got one call that sounded good and wasn't, but so the idea is when you crowdsource information, that's what those conferences are great at, that you can sort of not just get one perspective, but bring all these perspectives together.
Yeah. So that's my, for sure, February. Plus I can get some tacos and some barbecue in Austin, which is never a bad
Awesome.
thing to do. All right, so
cool.
that's going to do it for us this week, Seth. Any final parting words? We're going to talk about content by way of AI next week.
Absolutely. Look, it's the hot topic right now, so we'll get that in, and just have a great weekend. I'll see you next week.
Have a great weekend, folks. We'll see you next week. Of course, if you always want to catch us and take us on the go, you can do so by downloading the Law Firm Blueprint podcast, available Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever podcasts are available. Of course, give us a 5-star review if you are doing that. And we are live every Thursday here in the Law Firm Blueprint Group at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. Be sure to give us the comments down below if there's anything that you want us to talk about. I did some cool stuff this weekend, did some filming for the Law Firm Blueprint, so I'm going to be posting some other stuff up and some stuff. And next month, to start a new year, we've got Melissa Shanahan, who's going to help us and post some stuff like Jordan has done and Jessica has done in months past. So we've got a lot of great content coming for you in the group. Make sure you've joined the Law Firm Facebook group. Law Firm Blueprint Facebook group as well. But for that, I'm going to say bye for me, bye for Seth, bye for now.